The rain hammered down on the streets of Manhattan like bullets from the sky, turning the sidewalks into rivers and sending well-dressed pedestrians scrambling for cover. Richard Ashford didn't notice. The 62-year-old tech billionaire was too absorbed in his phone, reviewing quarterly reports that showed his company's stock had just hit another all-time high. His custom-tailored suit was getting soaked, but he didn't care. Money could buy another one. Hell, money could buy 1,000 of them. His stomach growled, reminding him he'd skipped lunch to close a deal worth $300 million. Richard spotted a hot dog cart on the corner, the vendor huddled under a large umbrella. Perfect. Something quick before his dinner meeting with the mayor. He approached the cart, water dripping from his silver hair, and pointed at the glistening frankfurters, rotating slowly on the heated rollers. 2 dogs, everything on them, Richard said, already reaching for his wallet. The vendor, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, nodded and began preparing the order. Richard watched as the man grabbed a bun, placed a hot dog inside, and reached for the condiments. That's when it happened. "Don't eat that!" The shout came from behind him, high-pitched and desperate. Richard spun around, startled. A kid stood there, maybe 12 or 13 years old, soaked to the bone. His clothes were little more than rags, held together by hope and dirt. His sneakers had holes in them, and his dark hair was plastered to his forehead. But it was his eyes that caught Richard's attention, wide, terrified, and locked on the hot dog cart. "What the hell?" Richard muttered, instinctively taking a step back. The boy rushed forward, his thin frame shaking. "Please, sir, don't eat that. You can't." The vendor's face darkened. "Get out of here, you little rat, always causing trouble. I'm calling the cops." He reached for his phone, but the boy didn't move. He stood his ground, looking up at Richard with an intensity that was unsettling. "I'm serious, mister, please. Something's wrong with that cart." Richard frowned. Was this some kind of scam? He'd seen plenty of hustlers in his years in New York, kids trying to pull fast ones on wealthy-looking targets. But something about this kid's voice, the raw fear in it, made him pause. He glanced at the hot dog the vendor had just handed him, then back at the boy. "What are you talking about?" Richard asked. The boy swallowed hard. "I've been watching this cart for 3 days. People who eat from it, they get sick. Really sick. I saw a lady collapse right there yesterday." He pointed to a spot on the sidewalk. "And an old man the day before. They both ate from this cart right before it happened." The vendor's face turned purple with rage. "That's a lie. This kid's crazy. He's homeless trash who steals from my cart. Don't listen to him." But Richard held up a hand, silencing the vendor. He studied the boy more carefully. The kid wasn't asking for money, wasn't trying to sell anything. He just stood there, shivering in the rain, looking like he was ready to physically knock the hot dog out of Richard's hand if necessary. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Richard asked quietly. The boy blinked, rainwater running down his face like tears. Because it's the right thing to do. My mom always said if you see someone in danger, you speak up, even if nobody listens, even if it costs you something." "Your mom? She died last year. Cancer. We lost everything paying for treatments that didn't work." The boy's voice cracked. "I've been on the street since. But I still remember what she taught me." Richard felt something shift inside his chest, something that hadn't moved in years. He looked at the hot dog in his hand, then at the vendor, who was now sweating despite the cold rain. "How long have you been operating this cart?" Richard asked the man. "That's none of your business. Are you going to eat or not? Answer the question." The vendor's eyes darted nervously. "A few months. What's it matter?" Richard pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Jennifer, it's Richard. I need you to call the health department right now. Yes, now. There's a food cart at the corner of 47th and 7th that needs an immediate inspection." He read off the vendor's license number from the side of the cart. "I don't care what they're doing. This takes priority." The vendor's face went white. "You can't do that. I have a permit." "We'll see about that," Richard said coolly. He turned to the boy. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus, sir. Marcus. I want you to stay right here with me. Don't go anywhere." The boy nodded, confused but hopeful. Within 15 minutes, 2 health inspectors arrived, along with a police officer. Richard watched as they examined the cart, his hot dog now lying in a trash can nearby. The inspectors pulled out testing equipment, took samples, and spoke in low voices to each other. One of them, a woman with steel-gray hair, approached Richard. "Sir, we're going to need to shut this cart down immediately. The temperature controls are completely broken. This food has been sitting in the danger zone for God knows how long. People could get seriously ill from this." The vendor started shouting, but the police officer stepped in, handcuffing him when he tried to flee. As they led him away, Richard turned to Marcus, who stood there looking stunned. "You saved me from food poisoning," Richard said. "Maybe worse." Marcus shrugged. I couldn't let you eat it, not when I knew." "You've been living on the streets for a year?" The boy nodded. "I've been trying to find work, but nobody hires kids without addresses or references. I sleep in a church doorway most nights. There's a soup kitchen that feeds us on Tuesdays and Thursdays." Richard studied the kid for a long moment. Here was someone who had nothing, absolutely nothing, who had risked getting arrested or beaten just to warn a complete stranger about spoiled food. Meanwhile, Richard had spent the morning figuring out how to lay off 300 employees to boost profit margins. The contrast was stark and uncomfortable. "Marcus, do you have any other family? Anyone at all?" "No, sir, it was just me and Mom." Richard made a decision. "Come with me." "What? Where?" "To get some dry clothes first, then some real food. And then we're going to talk about your future." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not a charity case, sir. I know you're not, but I need something from you." The boy looked confused. "What could I possibly give you?" Richard smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. A reminder of what's important, of what it means to do the right thing even when it costs you something. "You think you can do that?" Marcus nodded slowly, still not quite believing what was happening. Over the next few months, Richard set Marcus up in a small apartment, enrolled him in a good school, and made sure he had everything he needed. But more importantly, he listened to the kid. He heard stories about life on the streets, about the invisible people everyone walked past every day, about the systems that failed them over and over. Richard started using his wealth differently. He funded homeless shelters, education programs, and healthcare initiatives for those who couldn't afford it. He visited Marcus regularly, and the kid became like the son he'd never had. One evening, as they sat in Richard's penthouse overlooking the city, Marcus asked, "Why did you really help me that day?" Richard thought for a moment. "Because you showed me something I'd forgotten. That being rich isn't about how much money you have, it's about how you use it. And sometimes the poorest person in the room is the one with the most to teach." Marcus smiled. "My mom would have liked you. I wish I could have met her. She raised an extraordinary young man." The rain started falling outside again, just like that day months ago. But this time, both of them were warm and dry, looking out at a city that now seemed full of possibility rather than just profit. Richard had learned the most valuable lesson of his life from a homeless boy in the rain. That compassion costs nothing but means everything, and that sometimes the people with the least have the most to give. 6 months had passed since that rainy afternoon that changed everything. Marcus sat in the leather chair of Richard's corner office on the 45th floor of Ashford Technologies, his schoolbooks spread across the glass coffee table. The view of Manhattan stretched out before them, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled over the skyline. He was supposed to be doing algebra homework, but instead, he found himself watching Richard pace back and forth, phone pressed to his ear, his face tight with frustration. "I don't care what the board thinks, Jennifer," Richard snapped into the phone. "We're moving forward with the initiative. Yes, I know it'll cost us short-term profits. That's not the point." He paused, listening. "Then let them call for a vote. I still own 51% of this company, and what I say goes." He ended the call and tossed the phone onto his desk with more force than necessary. Marcus looked up from his textbook, concerned. Everything okay, Mr. Ashford? Richard had long ago told Marcus to call him Richard, but the kid still couldn't quite bring himself to do it. Some habits from the streets died hard: respect for authority, wariness of getting too comfortable, always maintaining an escape route. Richard understood. He didn't push it. The board's fighting me on the scholarship program, Richard said, rubbing his temples. They think investing $20 million in homeless youth education is fiscally irresponsible. He made air quotes with his fingers, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Marcus closed his textbook. Maybe they have a point. I mean, that's a lot of money. Don't, Richard interrupted, pointing a finger at him. Don't you dare start thinking like them. That's exactly what they want, to make compassion seem impractical. You know how much I made last quarter alone? $240 million. $20 million is pocket change, Marcus. It's less than what I spend on corporate jets. I know, but nothing. You want to know what I did this morning? I read a report about a 15-year-old girl living in her car with her baby brother because their parents died in a car accident. She's been going to school, keeping up her grades, taking care of a 2-year-old, all while sleeping in a Honda Civic in a Walmart parking lot. Richard's voice cracked slightly. She's you, Marcus. 6 months ago, she was you. And my board thinks helping kids like that is a waste of money. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere down there, in those streets he knew so well, kids were huddling in doorways, digging through trash cans, trying to stay warm. He'd been one of them. He still had nightmares about it. What are you going to do? Marcus asked quietly. Richard joined him at the window. I'm going to fight, and I'm going to win, but I need you to do something for me. Anything. The board meeting is next Tuesday. I want you to speak. Marcus's head whipped around. What? No way. I can't. Yes, you can. These people, they see homelessness as a statistic, a line item on a budget report. They need to see a face. They need to hear a voice. They need to understand that we're not talking about abstract concepts. We're talking about human beings. I'm not good at public speaking. I'll mess it up. You stood in the rain and screamed at a billionaire stranger to save his life, even though you thought you might get arrested or beaten for it. Don't tell me you're not brave enough to talk to a room full of suits. Marcus felt his hands shaking. That was different. That was instinct. This is planned. What if I freeze up? What if I say something stupid? Richard placed a hand on the kid's shoulder. Then you say something stupid. So what? Marcus, these people have been saying stupid things in board meetings for years, and they get paid millions for it. You're smarter than half of them, and you've lived through things they couldn't imagine in their worst nightmares. Just tell your story, that's all. Just be honest. Marcus took a deep breath. Through the window he could see the corner where he used to sleep, 14 blocks south. From up here it looked so small, so insignificant, but he remembered how huge and terrifying it had felt when it was his whole world. Okay, he said finally, I'll do it. The following Tuesday, Marcus stood outside the boardroom in a suit Richard had bought for him. It felt strange and constricting, like he was wearing someone else's skin. Through the frosted glass doors, he could hear voices. Confident, powerful voices discussing quarterly projections and shareholder value. His stomach churned. Jennifer Chen, Richard's executive assistant, appeared beside him. She was a sharp woman in her 30s who'd always been kind to Marcus. You ready, kiddo? Not even a little bit. She smiled. Good. That means you care. The day you stop being nervous about things that matter is the day you become like them. She nodded toward the boardroom. Richard believes in you. And honestly, so do I. Now get in there and remind those fossils what humanity looks like. The doors opened, and Marcus walked in. 20 faces turned to look at him, mostly older white men in expensive suits, a few women, all of them radiating wealth and authority. Richard sat at the head of the table, giving Marcus an encouraging nod. There was an empty chair beside him, but Marcus had been instructed to stand at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard announced, this is Marcus Thompson. 6 months ago, he was living on the streets. Today he's a straight-A student at Westbridge Academy. I've asked him to speak to you about why our scholarship initiative matters. Marcus, the floor is yours. Marcus gripped the podium, his knuckles turning white. 20 pairs of eyes stared at him, some curious, some impatient, some openly skeptical. He opened his mouth, and nothing came out. The silence stretched. Someone coughed. Marcus felt sweat forming on his forehead. Then he saw it, in the corner of the room, reflected in the window, the ghost of who he'd been. That scared, starving kid in rags, shouting at a stranger in the rain because it was the right thing to do. That kid hadn't been afraid. That kid had been brave. Marcus cleared his throat. You want to know why $20 million matters? I'll tell you, it's because that's approximately what 4,000 kids cost to put through high school and college. 4,000 kids who right now are sleeping in cars, in shelters, under bridges, in abandoned buildings. 4,000 kids who are smart and capable and full of potential, but who won't make it because the system has forgotten they exist. He paused, looking around the room. Some of the board members were leaning forward now, paying attention. Last year, my mom died. We'd spent everything we had trying to save her life, and we failed. I was 12 years old, and suddenly I had nothing. No home, no family, no future. I learned how to survive, how to find food in dumpsters, how to avoid the dangerous people, how to stay warm when it was freezing. I got good at it. Really good at it. Marcus's voice grew stronger. But you know what I couldn't figure out? How to get out, because once you're on the streets, you're invisible. You can't get a job without an address. Can't get an address without money. Can't get money without a job. It's a trap, and it's designed to keep you stuck forever. One of the board members, a woman with silver hair, leaned forward. So how did you get out? Marcus looked at Richard. Somebody gave me a chance. Somebody saw me as a human being instead of a problem to be avoided. And that changed everything. Not just for me, for everyone I'm going to help in the future. Because I'm not going to forget where I came from. I'm not going to pretend that people like me don't exist. He turned back to the board. You're sitting here debating whether 4,000 lives are worth $20 million. Do you know what Richard spent on renovating this boardroom? $18 million. This room, this one room where you sit for a few hours a week, cost almost as much as saving 4,000 kids. So don't tell me it's about the money. It's about priorities. It's about whether you see homeless kids as human beings worth investing in, or just as statistics you'd rather ignore. The room was dead silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Had he gone too far? Probably. These people could destroy Richard's initiative with a single vote. They could... The silver-haired woman started clapping. Slowly at first, then others joined in. Not everyone. 3 board members sat with their arms crossed, faces hard. But more than half the room was applauding. Richard stood up, beaming. Thank you, Marcus. That's exactly what I needed them to hear. He looked around the table. Now, let's vote. The final tally was 14-6 in favor of the scholarship program. Marcus had done it. 4,000 kids were going to get the chance he'd been given. As they left the boardroom, Richard pulled Marcus aside. You know what you just did in there? Probably committed career suicide? Richard laughed. No. You reminded them that business isn't just about profit, it's about people. Some of them will forget that by tomorrow, but some of them won't. And that's how change happens, Marcus. One conversation at a time. Marcus smiled, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Not just for himself, but for all those kids still out there, still fighting to survive. They were invisible to most people, but not anymore. Not if he had anything to say about it.